Hey class, it's Andrea. We are back for your online lecture number 3, and this week's lecture is on our pitch. And if you're following along, this will be in chapter 10 of your textbook on pages 288 through 293. Let's get started. So what do we know about pitch? Well, we can talk about our expectations. Typically, we would expect a female to have like a higher pitch than a male. And also someone who, we're going to talk about someone's size. So this is not just if someone's wider or thinner than another person. This also includes their height. So if someone is a larger size, so maybe they're wider and taller, we would expect them to have a lower pitch than a person who is shorter and smaller. The reason for this is how much room there is for resonance. So we would just expect that a person who is larger has more room for resonance, therefore they have a lower pitch than a person who is smaller, as they would have less room for resonance and they would have a higher pitch. Now, these are just expectations, but we know in reality that this is not always the case. Plenty of times you'll run into, especially now that people are doing online dating, usually maybe you call first or you hear the voice and then you see a picture of them, or maybe you're scrolling and you look at a picture of them first and then you meet them in person and hear their voice and it's like, oh, it's so different than what you were expecting. So we know that this is not like, these are just expectations. It's not a hard and fast rule. Okay. So, let's talk about vibrations. We're going to talk about frequency of vibrations. So that means how many times your vocal folds open and close. This is all stuff from chapter 3. I just want to review a couple ideas before we get into talking about pitch. So we remember that the more frequency a person has, the higher their pitch. And let's talk about what frequency is. It's how many times a person's vocal folds open and close. That's open and close is one cycle. So how many times does your vocal folds go through a cycle in a second? So if a person's vocal folds go through, let's say 5 cycles in a second, and person B, their vocal folds go through 10 cycles in a second, we would know that person B would have a higher pitch than person A, right? Because the more cycles that you have in a second, the higher pitch that you have. Now, I was just throwing out an arbitrary number, 5 and 10, just so we can get the idea. If someone really had 5 and 10, which I think is kind of impossible, cycles, then their voice would be so low, I don't think our ears would even register it. So, anyways, just the idea that the more frequency, then the higher the pitch, the lower the frequency, the lower the pitch. There we go. Okay, so let's talk about factors that determine a person's pitch. There are 2 really big factors. One is the length of the actual vocal folds. And so I'm using just kind of more of a layman's term, vocal folds. Sometimes people say another term is like vocal, like your cords, your voice cords. Some people just refer it to your voice. But vocal folds are the term that we use, and it's your anatomical term. So if you hear vocal folds, think of your voice, think of your cords, your vocal cords. So those actual ligaments, the longer they are, then the deeper your voice will sound. And then the shorter they are, the higher the voice will sound. And then the size of resonating cavities. Okay, so we think not just of your own body, right? But your oral cavity. So everything in your mouth, your oral nasal cavity, your mouth, and then the cavities inside your nose. If you have a larger cavity, then your voice is going to resonate more and it will be a deeper tone than if it was a smaller cavity, because there's less volume in a smaller cavity, and so it gives you a high tone. So if you guys are at home, one really cool way to demonstrate this, which you all may be able to just imagine, maybe I'm sure you all have done this before, but if you get a Coke bottle and you drink some of the Coke out or whatever, and you open the cup and you blow air right across the top of the Coke bottle, you'll hear like a pitch, right? So if there's some drink in it, if there's still like some drink left in it, and a decent amount, it will be a high tone. And then as you keep drinking whatever the drink is, and there's less Coke in it, then the tone will become deeper. And because what you're doing is you're changing the volume, the amount of like airspace that's inside that bottle. So the less airspace that's inside there, then the higher the pitch whenever you blow across the lid. And the more open airspace there is, then the deeper the pitch. And so that airspace is a resonating cavity. A cavity is just something that is like that holds air, right? So we would call that airspace inside there is a cavity. And resonating just means that can vibrate. And so anyways, so the air inside there can vibrate in that cavity. And there we go. So length of vocal folds and size of resonating cavities. Let's move on to our terms. Okay, so there's two really important terms that the book highlighted, and I want to highlight too, and that's optimum pitch and habitual pitch. Optimum pitch is the pitch that your vocal folds and resonating cavities are naturally suited to produce. So it's not always the same as your habitual pitch, and we'll talk about habitual pitch, which is the pitch you use all the time. So we would want it to be the same. We would want your optimum pitch and your habitual pitch to be the same, because if you don't have it and they're different, then you're putting strain on your vocal folds. Your optimum pitch is the pitch that you can most easily produce, and that's best suited for you. And so this is different for everyone. So even if you're the same height and weight, but you guys are different genders, like, your pitch is going to be different, or like there's just so many variables. Everyone has their own optimum pitch. And then a habitual pitch is what you use all the time. And so I'm sure everyone can think of someone who maybe you think they sound fake. I know I was watching a video not too long ago, and it was a picture of a girl who had, or it was a video of a girl who, it's on a TV show, dancing. It's like first dates, and your first date is dancing with them. I don't know if y'all seen it. It's on Hulu. It's great. But she has this voice that sounds fake because it doesn't sound like it's her own. And it's really high, and she keeps talking like this all the time. And part of the reason why I was like, okay, I think that's the that's what's going on with her, is because she would lower her voice in other instances, but then keep it up and high when she's trying to look cute and act nice and like want people to like her, so that is a great example of how people may change their habitual pitch, and how it would be different from your optimum pitch. And a lot of people may not be doing it on purpose. It could just be very subconscious. It could be something that they did their whole life. And so, anyways, it's just something interesting to look at. So I want you to determine your own optimum pitch, And what you're going to need is you're going to need another person to help you with this. You'll need another person to listen and just make sure that what you say and the thing that, like, your ear, that you're not going crazy. And you need that person to be there physically, not someone on the phone or Skype, because there will be differences in sound. Just like how whenever you say something into a recording and then you listen to it back, you're like, oh, wow, I sound a whole lot different than I thought I sound. That's actually based on resonance. And how we hear ourselves is through our ears and the sound that goes out of our mouth, but we also hear the sound being resonated back in, like our resonated by our bones. That's how we have like bone conduction. And so anyways, we can't always really trust the pitch that we hear with our own ears, so we have to have another friend to help us out. So you're going to need another friend who is physically with you. You need a musical instrument to play a music scale. And if you don't have a piano or guitar, you can always follow this link. There's a ton of really cool apps out there, or just places on the internet that has like a virtual piano, and so you can play the keys. And you'll follow the instructions on page 288 to 289 to determine your optimal pitch or optimum pitch. And then I want you to also determine your habitual pitch. And again, follow the instructions. That starts on 289. And again, you'll need a friend and an instrument, and you need to have someone who is physically with you, not just someone who's on the phone or Skype. So there you go. So I need you to do that. We'll continue on our lecture. You can do figuring out what your habitual pitches and optimal pitches after the lecture. So let's talk a little bit about changing your habitual pitch. So how do you do this? It's actually not very difficult. Really what you need to do is just a couple of things. First, you just need to practice. You need to practice not just a number of times a day. It's not really about how many times a day you practice. We really just want to limit to twice a day. But we want to make sure that you are practicing for many days out of the calendar year. So the more days you practice a week, the faster you'll change your habitual pitch, which is pretty cool. So we want you to practice twice a day. If you need to change your habitual pitch, you do that so that you would avoid vocal fatigue, right? Because if your habitual pitch is at least 2 notes different than your optimum pitch, then that means that you're straining your voice to make it to speak, whether that's notes higher, if you're raising your voice a little bit higher than optimum, or lower and you're lowering your voice lower than optimum. That produces vocal fatigue, and over time that can do some really big damage to your vocal folds. You also want to make sure that you drink plenty of water. This is also just a really good thing for you to do in general to help avoid vocal fatigue. And then also limit your reading sessions, just 2 readings for each session. And so on page 290 is an exercise for changing your habitual pitch. And so if you do need to change your habitual pitch, that would be a really great exercise for you to take a look at. And let's see. Well, I'll go over that at the end. Okay. So next, we have exercises are over 2 things: changing habitual pitch, and the second is extending your pitch range. So a lot of times we don't vary our vocal range very much whenever we speak. Maybe you just say you speak with a couple tones. And people who I would say vary their pitch a lot are like newscasters, broadcasters, and usually I think people do when they do this, they usually raise their pitch rather than lowering their pitch. I know that at the end of each sentence, if you're stating a fact, you have a tendency to lower your pitch, and that's great. Like, that's how we know this is a fact. And then if it's a question, we raise it up at the end and we say, this is a question. But in general, when we naturally talk, we tend to raise it. So when is it most often lower, right? So it's lower in the morning because it's relaxed. Your vocal folds are relaxed. You have spent hopefully at least 8 hours sleeping and not talking and not using your voice. And that is not typical for you to do during a day. Typically, you'll talk, maybe the last time that you've talked at most has been like an hour ago, probably a lot sooner. You probably talked a lot sooner than then. So this is a great time to work on extending your vocal pitch ranges in the evening. Now, when you do, there are some exercises that you can do to help make this process better and not as difficult on your vocal folds. And those are on page 291 and it goes to 293. And when you do these, you have to be careful because you don't want to hurt your vocal folds. So, yes. I keep wanting to discuss which exercises they are, but I think that's the next couple slides. So, let us carry on. Okay. So, these are your discussion post questions. I want you to take a look at them, and you can pause the video here whenever you need to do your discussion post questions. Okay, so let's discuss your homework assignment. This is what I've been wanting to do. Okay, awesome. So I thought just to make sure that every exercise is being highlighted and just so that you all are able to experience all of them and learn about all of them, I just divided it up so that everyone is doing at least one of them. So this is an individual assignment, so you will submit your own video. Although you may be working on an exercise that has more than at least everyone will have one that has 2 people assigned to the same exercise. I want you to submit your own work and do your own work for it. And you'll take a video just like you have in the past, and it will be a video that has, of course, audio and visual. And I want you to record yourself doing the exercise assigned to you at least one time, or you must record it, and then practice at least one time before you record. It makes it so much easier and just so much better. So anyways, so if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. Dr. Davis and I are here. We're here for you, and I totally understand that this online format is not necessarily what y'all signed up for. It's not what I signed up for, so I totally get it. But we're here to help you. If you guys have any questions on the material, the content, if you have questions on submitting, or if you're having difficulties, please let us know. And we'll be very happy to communicate with you in email or whatever. Maybe we can do a Zoom meeting, and just in case there's some problems, we can share computer screens so we can help work it out, because we want you to make sure that you get the points that you put your work into. So yes, don't hesitate to reach out. We are here to help. Do keep in mind that if you send an email out late at night, chances are we're probably not going to see it, but we'll get to it as soon as we can the next day. So just be mindful of that whenever it's the submission day, because if we get an email late at night, and you're having trouble submitting, then it would be difficult for us to communicate with you and resolve that issue before the due date, before the time. So just give yourself some time to turn in your homework. We're here to help if you have any questions. And make sure that you, let's see, gotta look at my list. So make sure that you upload a video of yourself doing the exercise that you're assigned to. And then make sure that you answered the discussion post questions on the discussion. And I also want to make sure that the last thing is make sure that you respond to some classmates. So there you go. Those are the 3 things that you need to do. And if you have any questions, we're here. Take good care and talk soon.